are you doing these days in music?
Well, right now I'm recording my next solo record and waiting to get in the studio and do some stuff with TSO for their new record. And October, TSO rehearsals will start again.
In Savatage, you've been in and out of the band for lots of years. What was always the case in that?
Well, I only technically left on one occasion. I mean, when I first toured with them, I wasn't a member of the band. They didn't even have a position for a full-time second guitar player. Then they asked me to join for Gutter, and I was pretty young and pretty, I don't know if the word's foolish, I was just uneducated about the business, I guess, and I made a decision to leave after the Gutter Ballet tour and then try to do my own band, which, I probably should have remained in the band and just tried to do some stuff on the side, but I was only 21 years old. I really didn't know much better, so I left the band at that time, and so did John Olivo about a year later, and we started working together on Dr. Butcher, and then when Siva died, we both went back into Savatage, so it really wasn't a lot of times that I was out of the band. It was just basically probably about a year and a half period where I wasn't involved with John Olivo or Savatage in some way.
What's Trans-Siberian Orchestra? Is it mostly Christmas albums you guys do with that?
It is, at the moment, mostly what we tour. There is one non-Christmas CD called Beethoven's Last Night, and there's another non-Christmas CD being worked on right now called Night Castle, and that's going to be out in October. And once that's released, we're going to do some more. We're going to do shows that are non-Christmas, and we're hoping to turn it around to where the band can play all year long.
How's your solo career coming out? You get a good response?
It has its, like anything else, it has its ups and downs. I mean, the business has changed so much, and, at a time, I think, where, I definitely would have been doing, or things would have been much easier for me to do had this been 10 years ago. I mean, with the way the sales have dropped and the level that I'm at on my solo thing, it really affects me in a lot of ways, trying to get things done where, if I'm not generating huge sales, I mean, it's doing okay, and it's really fulfilling to do my records and to be able to achieve putting out this stuff on my own, but it definitely is got a lot of challenges to it. But I'm really happy with the new record I'm working on now. It's some great music, and just to be able to make these records and get them out there for people to hear. I mean, for me, that's kind of all I'm looking to get out of it right now, because I'm so busy with TSO and my other, the other stuff that I've been doing, that my solo records are just a way for me to really, express myself on my time off in a positive way.
What do you think of the internet compared to the 80s when you really had to push yourself to sell your albums and promote? And now is it like easier in a sense, but then harder because you get 10 million more bands in the same boat?
Well, what it is with me, it's like my schedule is pretty much set up every year to where I have a certain amount of time that I'm playing with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and it's a little difficult for me to get involved with something on the outside, because you can't expect, old hard bands to shut down for 4 months at a time just because I'm working. So it's difficult for me to join something else. So the best thing for me to do was to establish my own thing to do. I mean, because Savatage is not playing. I mean, that would be the only other thing really that I could do that would fill in my time would be Savatage, because everybody else in Savatage is involved in TSO, but unfortunately right now, at this time, Savatage isn't playing. Hopefully that's going to change too in the future. We've been discussing doing something with Savatage in the next couple of years.
Why is it not being pushed more Savatage than TSO?
I mean, there's a bunch of reasons for that, I suppose. I mean, obviously TSO is doing some very serious business here in the United States, so, the bands did over 1 million tickets sold last year, and it's employing around, 250 people every year, and it's become this really massive entity, and, Savatage, it's not like it's in the way, but it would require a certain amount of attention right now, and everybody involved would have to be on the same page and just, go and do it and get it going. So I think it's I think one of these things where, brand for Savatage is getting big enough to where I think the band knows the fans want to see it, and I think everybody in the band misses playing it. So I think in probably the next 18 months, something will be happening with Savatage. I think it's just a natural thing. I mean, we took some time off, and I think everybody, like I said, band and fans are really in the band too much for it not to do something else. Yeah, I play with Alex every year in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. We played it. He's my guitar partner in the East Coast Trans-Siberian Orchestra touring company.
What do you think of him rejoining with Testament?
I think it's great. I'm really excited to see it. I mean, I think that it definitely makes Testament, the whole soul of the band gets put back together when Alex gets in there and plays. And I toured with Testament at a very young age with Savatage, and I saw them again about a month ago, and the band still has the same energy and the same vibe and feeling as it did 15, 16 years ago. I mean, it's definitely great to see Alex back with them, and I'm really happy to see how well they're doing.
What would you say is the peak of Savatage career for the, let's say, the best tours or best albums?
Well, I mean, I think the United States definitely had a peak at, with John Oliva singing at the time of Gutter Ballet. That was our peak in the States. I mean, the band did peak again with Zach singing around the time of Edge of Thorns, but unfortunately Chris passed. And then Savatage, we had peaked in Europe at the time of Wake of Magellan and Poets and Madmen. I mean, we were number 3 on the German pop charts and number 1 on the Dutch retail charts. I mean, we really had some serious peaks in Europe in the late 90s and early 2000s with Savatage. So, I mean, ultimately, the largest peak with Savatage is technically our song Christmas Eve Sarajevo, which, has sold millions of copies as a TSO song. I mean, that's, really the, transformation of Savatage into the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. That is a huge peak for everybody involved here. I mean, Paul had a great vision, and it took off. But I still think there's a possibility that Savatage may have another peak again if we do something new and it has the right chemistry. I think the band could still has the opportunity to make one more big statement before it says goodbye.
Like when you look at the 80s glam bands, they're starting to show up again in the scene, 20 years later.
Yep. I think there's a big resurgence of the older metal bands, and there's a lot of young kids that, whether their parents were into that kind of music or they're just discovering that, there are a lot of kids that are into that music. I mean, I know when I was in high school that it was past the time really of Zeppelin playing, but there was a lot of kids that got into Zeppelin, and I think the same thing's happening now with these kids getting into the Judas Priest and Iron Maidens and the bands that were huge in the 80s.
Bands that are timeless still never die, in a sense. It's always rejuvenating. When you start picking up the guitar, who you look at, like, for as a guitar player?
I was a big fan of a bunch of different guitar players. I was into Rush and Triumph and Kiss and Judas Priest, and I liked Ted Nugent a lot and Michael Schenker, and I was a fan of Yngwie and Tony Iommi and Eddie Van Halen. It was a lot of great guitar players that were out at that time. I think the guitar playing is starting to get a lot better again. I think there was a period of time in the metal and hard rock music where the solos disappeared from the music, and it really wasn't that cool to be a quote-unquote guitar hero. But I think that there's definitely a resurgence of that and the focus on the guitar, the instrument itself. So there was a ton of players that I loved, blues players like Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and more progressive players like Al Di Meola and Steve Morse. I mean, I like all different kinds of guitar players.
You're looking at the Guitar Hero. You ever see the game that was produced a couple of years back?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of that coming into scene for kids that really didn't pick up a guitar, but they pick up this and they're actually starting to get the vibe for all these bands.
I think I've watched the game be played a couple times. I haven't played it. I think the great thing is that, you know, kids are getting into the music, and I mean, I hope that it can lead to more people wanting to actually play the instrument. You know, only thing that makes me worry is that, you know, you seem to they seem to accomplish something a lot quicker with that in terms of just kind of, you know, pressing buttons and it being more of a video game thing than an actual music thing. But it's definitely focusing a lot of attention on guitar and rock music. And Trans-Siberian Orchestra, we have a couple songs in the next version of that that's coming out, so that it's definitely not something that I'm opposed to. I think it's great. I just, like I said, I hope it leads to people starting to pick up the actual instruments.
Yes, like you've seen I think it's called Rock Band. Now they even have a drum set added to it. You see that?
Exactly.
And that's quite good when you see it, because you see the kids playing the drums, and this could lead in 10 years from now a whole different type of music from the way they learn.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the drumming one, if they're actually using sticks, is that they're actually kind of playing drums. So maybe that will lead to them wanting to get a real drum set and maybe want to try playing that, because they're going to have to actually use their hands like drums. So yes, I can hear you. Well, thank you very much for the interview, and I guess there's actually been talk of maybe the Trans-Siberian Orchestra getting up your way. I know I've never played up there, but I've heard it's very beautiful. I'd like to get up there. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Chris, and you have a good evening.